Have you ever found yourself caught between desire and loyalty? This story takes unexpected turns, and we want to hear from you. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss tomorrow's special story. It's one you won't want to miss. Hit that like button if you love gripping infidelity stories, and let's dive into the drama together. Why is my husband enjoying this? Jake's strange encouragement. It started with small things, subtle enough that Emma barely noticed at first. A passing comment here, a knowing smile there. But looking back, she could see the pattern, the way it all slowly escalated. Emma and Jake had been married for 5 years. They were young, in their late 20s, still figuring things out, but their relationship had always felt solid. Jake was confident, charming in an effortless way, the kind of man who never seemed threatened by anything. So when he first started making remarks about Ryan, she didn't think much of it. Ryan had been around for years, a close family friend, someone who felt almost like an extension of their circle. He was the kind of guy who made people laugh without trying, the one who could ease any tension in a room with just a grin. Emma had always liked him, but in the same way she liked any good friend. Sure, there was an energy between them, a certain chemistry, but it was harmless, at least, she had always thought so. Then came the comments. "You always light up when Ryan's around," Jake had said one evening, his voice casual, almost amused. Emma had laughed it off. "That's ridiculous." But then, the next time they were all together, Jake said something else. "You should wear that dress tomorrow. You know, the one Ryan said looked amazing on you." She had paused, turning to look at him. "Why does that matter?" Jake just shrugged. "No reason. It suits you." At first, she thought he was just being playful, teasing her like he always did. But then he kept going. Encouraging her to laugh at Ryan's jokes, nudging her to sit closer when they were all hanging out, casually suggesting that she spend time alone with Ryan when the opportunity presented itself. One night, they were getting ready to host a barbecue, and Jake had thrown out an idea that made her stop in her tracks. "Why don't you go pick up some extra drinks with Ryan? It'll be quicker without me." Emma had hesitated. I guess. But we can all go." Jake had just smiled, handing her the car keys. "Nah, you two go. I'll start the grill." His eyes had lingered on hers for just a moment too long, and suddenly, the whole thing felt different. Like there was something unsaid hanging in the air between them. As she slid into Ryan's passenger seat, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a simple errand. It was something else. Jake had set this up. And for the first time, Emma began to wonder why. Intensifying attraction with Ryan. As the car rumbled down the road, Emma tried to shake the uneasy feeling creeping up her spine. It was just a quick trip to the store, nothing more. She and Ryan had done things like this 100 times before, always in the company of others, always under the unspoken rule of friendship. But tonight, something felt different. Ryan glanced at her from the driver's seat, his usual laid-back smirk playing on his lips. "You've been different lately," he said, his tone casual but curious. Emma frowned, shifting in her seat. "Different how?" "I don't know." "Lighter," he mused, his fingers drumming on the steering wheel. "It looks good on you." She let out a nervous laugh, brushing his words aside, but inside, she felt something shift. Had she changed? Or was it just that she was starting to notice things she had ignored before? The store was bright and crowded, filled with weekend shoppers grabbing last-minute essentials. Emma tried to focus on the task at hand, pushing the cart down the aisles as Ryan grabbed a few six-packs of beer. They moved as they always did, laughing about pointless things, throwing playful jabs at each other. But underneath the surface, something simmered, an unspoken energy that neither of them dared acknowledge. Then it happened. They both reached for the same bag of chips at the exact same moment, their hands brushing. Neither of them moved right away. The touch lingered, too long to be accidental, too short to mean anything concrete. Emma felt her breath hitch, her skin suddenly aware of how close he was. Ryan didn't pull away first. When she finally did, her fingers tingled where his had been. She forced a chuckle, trying to make light of it. "You always steal my favorite snacks," she joked, but her voice came out weaker than she'd intended. Ryan just smiled, but his eyes stayed locked on hers, unreadable. The drive back was quiet, the air thick with something neither of them dared put into words. Emma felt the weight of it pressing against her chest. She thought of Jake, of his knowing looks, of the way he had practically pushed her into this situation. Did he know this would happen? Did he want it to? When they pulled into the driveway, Jake was already waiting on the porch, a beer in hand, watching them. He smiled, easy and relaxed, like he hadn't just set something into motion that couldn't be undone. "How was the store run?" he asked, eyes flicking between them. Emma swallowed, forcing a casual tone. "Fine. Just crowded." Jake's gaze lingered on her, searching. Then, with a slow, almost amused nod, he took a sip of his drink. "Good," he said. "Glad you two had some time to catch up." The words were simple, but they held weight. And for the first time, Emma wasn't sure who was playing who. Jake knows but doesn't intervene. That night, as Emma lay in bed next to Jake, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The trip to the store with Ryan should have been insignificant, just an errand, just a moment. But it wasn't. It had been charged, electrified by something neither of them had fully acknowledged, yet both had felt. And Jake. Jake had seen it. She could still picture the way he had looked at her when they got back, his expression calm, almost knowing. He hadn't asked for details. He hadn't probed. Instead, he had just let the moment sit there, letting her stew in it. As she turned onto her side, she hesitated before speaking. "Jake." He didn't move, but his voice came soft, steady. "Yeah." She took a breath, choosing her words carefully. "Why did you want me to go with Ryan tonight?" There was a long silence before he answered. "Because I trust you," he said simply. Something about the way he said it made her stomach tighten. "And him?" Jake finally turned to face her, his eyes unreadable in the dim light. "Yeah. I trust him too." That should have been reassuring. But it wasn't. Before she could respond, he continued. "Honestly, Em, I think it's good for you." She blinked. "Good for me?" Jake's slow, deliberate smile sent a shiver down her spine. "You've been different lately. Lighter. It looks good on you." Her breath caught. The words were almost identical to what Ryan had said in the car. A coincidence? Or something more? She studied her husband's face, searching for jealousy, irritation, something. But there was nothing. Just calm, quiet amusement, like he was watching a scene unfold exactly as he had expected it to. "Jake," she said carefully, "what are you saying?" He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm saying life's too short to ignore the things that make you feel alive." Emma's heart pounded. She didn't know what she had been expecting him to say, but it wasn't that. She tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. "Are you giving me permission for something?" Jake's expression didn't change. "I'm just saying, if something were to happen, I wouldn't be mad." Her stomach twisted. 1,000 thoughts swarmed in her head, none of them making sense. Was this a test? A trap? Or had Jake been steering her in this direction the whole time? She wanted to ask more, to press him, but she couldn't bring herself to say the words. So instead, she rolled onto her back, staring at the ceiling as Jake reached over and turned off the lamp. In the darkness, her thoughts ran wild. Was this really happening? And if it was, what was she supposed to do next? Ryan pushes the boundaries. The next few days passed in a blur, but Emma couldn't stop thinking about Jake's words. If something were to happen, I wouldn't be mad. What did that even mean? Was he testing her? Did he actually want her to cross a line with Ryan? Or was this just his twisted way of proving a point, showing her that she wasn't as loyal as she thought? She told herself she was overthinking it. That nothing had actually changed. But deep down, she knew that was a lie. Everything had changed. She saw Ryan differently now, or maybe she was just allowing herself to see what had been there all along. The casual touches, the way his eyes lingered on her a little too long, the inside jokes that carried a weight they never had before. She felt herself pulled toward him, as if an invisible force was pushing them closer, and for the first time, she wasn't entirely sure she wanted to resist. That Friday, they hosted another small get-together at their house. Just a few friends, nothing out of the ordinary. Ryan arrived late, as usual, flashing his signature grin as he walked in, but when his eyes met hers across the room, something passed between them, something unspoken, heavy. Jake noticed. Of course he did. Ryan. Jake called, raising his beer. You've got to try the ribs. Emma outdid herself this time. His voice was light, playful, but there was a knowing edge to it. Emma felt her face flush. She avoided Ryan's gaze, busying herself with pouring another drink, but she could feel his presence inching closer. Later in the evening, when she went into the kitchen to grab a bottle of wine, Ryan followed. She knew it before she even turned around. You're avoiding me, he said, leaning casually against the counter. Emma forced a laugh, keeping her hands busy with the corkscrew. Don't be ridiculous. Ryan didn't smile. He didn't move. You know you can talk to me, right? His voice was quieter now, more serious. If something's on your mind. Emma finally met his eyes, and for the first time, she couldn't pretend there was nothing there. Because there was. Something thick. Something dangerous. She swallowed, looking away. I don't know what you're talking about. Ryan exhaled, a short, knowing laugh. He stepped closer, not enough to touch her, but enough that she could feel the heat of him, enough that her body tensed in response. Emma. His voice was lower now, more deliberate. Tell me I'm wrong. Her breath caught. Before she could answer, before she could even process what was about to happen, Jake walked in. There you are, Jake said easily, but his eyes were sharp. Everything okay? Emma forced a smile. Yeah. Just grabbing the wine. Jake's gaze flickered between the two of them, and for a second, just a second, she thought she saw amusement in his expression. Like he was waiting for her to make a choice. Emma's emotional tug-of-war. That night, after everyone had left, Emma sat on the couch, staring at the empty wine glass in her hand. The house was quiet, but inside her, there was nothing but noise. She could still feel the heat of Ryan standing too close, the weight of his words hanging in the air between them. And then there was Jake, his sharp, knowing gaze, his unsettling calm, like he was watching something unfold exactly the way he expected it to. She didn't know what scared her more, Ryan's growing boldness, or Jake's eerie acceptance of it all. Jake walked in then, casually dropping onto the couch beside her. He stretched his arms over the backrest, his fingers just grazing her shoulder, as if he could sense the tension in her body. For a moment, he didn't say anything, just watched her. Then, with a small smirk, he said, "You and Ryan seem close these days." Emma's stomach twisted. There it was. No subtlety, no teasing, just a direct hit. She swallowed, keeping her voice steady. We've always been close. Jake tilted his head, studying her. Yeah. But now, it's different. Emma felt her pulse spike, but she held his gaze. Are you trying to say something, Jake? He let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. Nope. Just an observation. Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Then, without looking at her, he added, You know, there's something exciting about all of this. Emma's breath caught. All of what? she asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted the answer. Jake turned to her then, his eyes dark with something she couldn't quite name. Feeling wanted, he said simply. Feeling alive. Her fingers tightened around the wine glass. I see the way Ryan looks at you, Jake continued. And I see how you respond to it. He leaned in just slightly, his voice dropping lower. It's kind of beautiful, in a way. Emma felt her heart hammering against her ribs. What was this? Was he pushing her toward Ryan? Was this all some kind of twisted game? She shook her head, letting out a dry laugh. This is crazy. Jake just smiled, slow and easy. Is it? She didn't answer. She couldn't. Because the truth was, a part of her wasn't sure anymore. That night, long after Jake had fallen asleep, Emma lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her thoughts were a mess, tangled in things she didn't want to admit. The way Ryan had looked at her. The way Jake had spoken to her. The way she felt caught between them, one pulling her closer, the other watching, waiting. She knew, deep down, that a line had already been crossed. Maybe not physically, not yet, but emotionally. She wasn't sure there was any going back. This story is filled with tension, unspoken desires, and a web of emotions that keeps pulling everyone in deeper. But now, we want to hear from you. What do you think about Jake's behavior? Is he truly okay with Emma and Ryan's growing connection, or is he playing a mind game? And what about Emma? Do you think she's just caught in the middle, or is she allowing herself to be drawn into something dangerous? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe in emotional cheating, or is everything fair game as long as no physical line is crossed? Have you ever found yourself in a situation where boundaries started to blur? Also, don't forget to like this video if you enjoy these intense, real-life stories, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss tomorrow's episode. Trust me, it's one you won't want to miss. Turn on the notification bell so you're the first to know when it drops. Let's dive into the discussion together. Tell us where you're watching from and what your take is on this thrilling story.